In March 2025, BYD and Leapmotor sold 805 and 332 vehicles respectively in the German market. However, their sales structure was completely different. For BYD, 87.3% of its sales were to corporate customers, meaning private users made up just over 10%. In contrast, more than 70% of Leapmotor's customers were private users. By March 2026, both BYD and Leapmotor had grown strongly, with BYD selling 3,438 vehicles and Leapmotor selling 1,388 vehicles. However, BYD's share of private users had risen to nearly 40%, while Leapmotor still had more than 80% private users. Why do BYD and Leapmotor, both strong players in the overseas market, have such different customer compositions? And what exactly do corporate users and private users mean in this context? This video will dig deeper into these questions. Many people familiar with European TV shows or automotive culture, or those who have long watched the EVAFocus program, may know that European car market is typically dominated by corporate users, with private users as a secondary segment. Additionally, long-term leasing and outright purchases are two major methods of car ownership. In developed countries like those in Europe, leasing is a common car ownership method. To distinguish between vehicle ownership, usage rights, and duration, in addition to traditional outright purchase or installment plans, there are also leasing and subscription systems. Ownership refers to the legal title of the vehicle, which in China is equivalent to holding vehicle's registration certificate. Usage rights, on the other hand, are about who holds the car keys, that is, who is using the car. This can vary depending on the ownership model. Leasing is a common system in Europe, typically involving a 2 to 4 year contract where the tenant pays a fixed monthly rental. In such arrangements, the legal ownership of the vehicle usage belongs to the bank, while the usage rights belong to the driver. In simple terms, the ownership certificate stays with the bank, while the user only holds the road use documents. Even if the registration lists the customer's name, they do not have full ownership. The subscription model is a newer development, with shorter contract durations typically lasting from 1 month to a maximum of 6 months. How significant is leasing in Europe? It accounts for more than half of all new car sales. According to European consulting firm Roland Berger, the leasing market will continue to grow until 2030, with the subscription model expected to double. Why is leasing so popular? Leasing has 3 key advantages. Flexibility. Leasing separates ownership and usage rights, meaning the owner can easily switch vehicles according to the lease term, allowing for constant access to new cars. Cash flow friendly. Leasing doesn't tie up large sums of money, which is advantageous for both individuals and companies. Tax deductions for companies. Monthly lease payments can be deducted as operational expenses, making it tax efficient for businesses. Some countries, like France, use leasing as a tool to promote electric vehicle sales. France's social leasing program, famously known for offering €100 per month electric car deals, helps low-income groups access eco-friendly electric vehicles through state-subsidized leasing, with monthly rents ranging from €50 to €150. A fun fact: salary conversion. In Europe, there is a concept called salary conversion, where employees can convert their benefits, shopping discounts, insurance, train tickets, bicycles, or even company cars into part of their pre-tax salary. These benefits are subject to taxation under Europe's detailed tax system, which can affect your taxable income. For example, let's say an employee with a gross income of €50,000 simulates purchasing a fuel-powered car, an electric car, or using a company-provided fuel car or electric company car. The analysis shows that buying a private car is the most expensive option, resulting in the lowest available disposable income after the purchase. On the other hand, having the company buy a car, even a fuel-powered one, turns out to be the most tax-efficient option from the perspective of disposable option. Now, here is an interesting part. While the purchase cost of an electric company car may be higher, the virtual salary tax is lower. In Germany's tax system, the tax base is calculated at 1% of the new car's list price. The tax base is calculated at 1% of the new car's list price, but plug-in hybrid and fully electric vehicles benefit from lower tax rates of 0.5% and 0.25% respectively. This This explains why corporate cars and leasing are so prevalent in Europe. From a company's perspective, leasing or subscription models are easier to write off for tax purposes and offer better cash flow management. For individuals, optimizing the tax system this way means more disposable income compared to buying a car themselves. When the interests of companies and employees align, this creates Europe's car market structure. Corporate registration as the main force, private registration as the secondary force, and leasing competing directly with outright purchases. Number 2, sales mix of Chinese brands in Europe. When discussing Chinese electric car companies expanding into Europe, many people might think of BYD and Lincoln Company using rental companies as their primary sales channel. But there may be some misunderstanding here. Some people assume Chinese OEMs are simply pushing inventory into rental companies, selling the cars and then walking away, or using rental company channels to inflate sales figures. But after looking at the examples we discussed earlier, this strategy should be easier to understand. Looking at BYD and Leapmotor, we see different parts. BYD focuses on the corporate users market, especially rental companies. In the early stage, it also relied on self-registration, meaning vehicles were registered through its own sales channels to boost registration numbers. On the other hand, Leapmotor targeted private users from the start, aiming for the more challenging European market. The data shows that from 2025 to 2026, BYD's public users share remained dominant, with self-registration playing a significant role at first. However, by March 2026, BYD's private users had risen to 40% and self-registration dropped to 15.2%, near the industry average of 14.9%. This reflects the steady improvement in BYD's sales quality. Leapmotor, however, consistently had a private user share of over 75%, even exceeding 80% in January and February 2026. BYD's strategy of entering through rental companies and corporate users makes sense. It allows them to gain early market experience, build brand recognition, and work through initial issues before targeting private users. Building a dealership network took time, and the early use of rental fleets helped in gaining practical experience. In contrast, Leapmotor benefited from Stellantis' existing channels and directly pursued private customers. They did not need to invest heavily in building dealerships or rely on rental companies for early traction. Instead, they took a steady, long-term approach, relying on customer feedback to establish lasting relationships. Stellantis, which owns the distribution network, also played a role in guiding Leapmotor's strategy. It wanted to avoid overshadowing its own brands, Peugeot, Citroën, and Fiat, so it pushed for a more cautious approach from Leapmotor. Simply put, BYD is taking the path from easy to difficult, from rental companies to corporate customers and then to private customers. Leapmotor is doing the opposite. There is no absolute right or wrong between these two parts. Based on their different identities and resources in Europe, BYD and Leapmotor simply chose the parts that best fit themselves. Challenges faced by Chinese brands. Why is it easier for the Chinese companies to enter the market through rental companies and corporate users before moving to private customers? This can be explained from multiple angles. As we discussed earlier, the European market tends to be corporate account-driven, with rental companies representing a large portion of that. For automakers, it's easier to start with rental companies, ensuring baseline sales. Additionally, the corporate market is much larger overall. The most important factor is that the reliance on after-sales service increases as you move from rental companies to traditional corporate users and finally to private users. Private customers are more concerned about convenience regarding repairs and maintenance, while corporate fleets have dedicated fleet management staff to handle such concerns. For rental companies, dealing with maintenance is second nature. However, the corporate market is not without challenges. Some large European companies have strict corporate car policies that exclude Chinese vehicles, favoring only German or specific brands. For example, German automakers are unlikely to buy domestic Chinese cars. As a result, Chinese brands focus on small and medium enterprises, gradually negotiating to break the restrictions of corporate car policies. Yet, challenges come with opportunities. Recent geopolitical events and the resulting shipping disruptions have led to rising fuel prices, car prices, and leasing costs. Particularly in the electric vehicle sector, it's becoming harder to find models that meet budget requirements while fitting corporate car policies. This creates an opportunity to potentially negotiate and break down some of those policy barriers. Chinese automakers have two key advantages here. Number 1, mindshare advantage. European consumers are increasingly aware of Chinese electric vehicles, associating them with advanced technology, affordability, and eco-friendliness. Chinese EVs are gaining recognition for their superior range, advanced features, and smart technology, even outperforming some European brands in core areas. Price to value advantage. Chinese electric cars offer better features and more value for the same price compared to some European brands. With rising fuel and car prices, this value proposition is even more attractive. In summary, China's car manufacturers entering the European market is a strategic move that aligns with the continent's corporate account-driven market while also leveraging their strengths in new energy technologies. BYD's gradual approach of starting with corporate users and moving to private users and Leapmotor's direct approach to private users both reflect strategic decisions based on their respective resources. Chinese brands' competitive advantages, such as their advanced electric technology and value for money offerings, gave them the potential to effectively penetrate the European market. But facing Europe's existing market barriers, whether it is the corporate car policy restrictions of large companies or the need to improve pre-sales and after-sales systems, Chinese automakers still need enough patience and strategy to slowly penetrate the market and gradually break through. With perseverance and strategic planning, they can reshape the competitive landscape in Europe and make the leap from simply exporting to establishing a strong foothold. The market gap created by shipping disruptions is an important opportunity for Chinese automakers to break the old structure. By grasping the two key advantages of consumer mindshare and value for money, while continuously improving channel construction and optimizing pre-sales and after-sales service, Chinese EVs have a real chance to secure their own place in Europe's mature and highly competitive market, whether they steadily advance through corporate customers or directly attack the private user market. The real goal is to make the leap from simply going overseas to truly taking root and eventually rewriting the competitive landscape of the European car market.